Alex Parker had always thought the old cedar house at the edge of Willowbrook Lane would be his safe harbor. His father built it with his own hands, every nail hammered on weekends after double shifts at the mill, every window framed with care. Even the porch swing had a story. His father carved their initials on the underside when Alex was 5. So when Alex drove back into town after 3 months away caring for his mother during her final chemotherapy treatments, he expected the house to be a bittersweet comfort. The first thing he noticed instead was the bright orange paper fluttering on the front door. Notice of lien and impending foreclosure, the bold black letters declared. Beneath it, in smaller print, Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. He blinked, thinking it had to be a mistake. His father had never joined any HOA. The house predated the entire subdivision by decades. When the new development sprouted up like a rash around them, his father insisted their property was separate. "They'll try to rope us in, but we're free," he had said with quiet pride. Now, with his father gone and his mother too ill to fight, it looked as though the HOA had finally made its move. Inside, the house smelled of dust and cedar oil. Alex set his duffel down and opened the letter. The words blurred as he read unpaid fees, retroactive assessments, violation of landscaping standards. They were demanding $27,000 in delinquent dues and threatening to auction the property at the next board meeting. He sank into his father's recliner, the leather cracked under his hands. A single photo on the mantel caught his eye, him at 8 years old, holding a hammer almost as big as his arm, while his dad guided his grip. The weight of loss and injustice pressed on his chest. By evening, he walked down Willowbrook Lane to the HOA office in the converted model home. The lobby smelled of coffee and lavender air freshener. Behind a desk sat a trim woman with an immaculate bob and a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Alex Parker," she said smoothly, as if expecting him. "I'm Karen Whitmore, president of the association. We've sent multiple notices. You're trespassing on HOA property until these matters are settled." "This is my house," Alex said, his voice low. "My father built it before there even was an HOA. We don't owe you a dime." Karen's smile widened just enough to show perfect teeth. "Our bylaws clearly state all properties within the boundaries of Willowbrook Estates are subject to assessments. Your father never signed, but the annexation passed unanimously 3 years ago. You're in arrears." Alex's pulse pounded in his ears. "Annexation? You can't just decide to take someone's property?" Her tone remained cool, almost amused. "We followed proper procedure. If you can't pay, the board will have no choice but to auction the home to recover fees. You have until next Friday." He left with his fists clenched, a storm building in his chest. Outside, the manicured lawns and uniform mailboxes of the subdivision felt like a hostile army. Back at the house, he opened boxes in the attic until he found his father's old paperwork, tax bills, the original deed, a stack of letters from years of HOA harassment. At the bottom lay a worn manila folder labeled Water Rights and Easements. His father had scribbled a note on top. "For Alex. If they come after the house, start here." Alex traced the handwriting with his finger. His father had known this day might come. As night fell, he sat on the porch swing, listening to the creak of chains and the distant hum of sprinklers. He felt the old house breathe around him, as though it too were waiting. He wasn't sure how yet, but he vowed the HOA would not take what his father built. The next morning, Alex woke to the sound of a lawnmower droning in perfect rows. Through his kitchen window, he could see a man in a bright green HOA polo shirt photographing his backyard with a tablet. Every few seconds, he bent down to measure something against a clipboard. Alex stepped outside. "Can I help you?" The man glanced up, startled, then recovered his official tone. "Routine compliance check. HOA Regulation 12B. He snapped one last photo of the fence and left without another word. Alex's stomach knotted. This wasn't just paperwork anymore. They were circling like vultures. He drove to the local diner for coffee and a clear head. The counter smelled of bacon and nostalgia. Most of the patrons were familiar faces from his childhood. Mrs. Harper from down the street, the retiree who used to fix bikes for neighborhood kids, even Coach Daniels who had taught Alex Little League. Yet when their eyes met his, conversation faltered. A couple looked away. "Word travels fast," murmured the waitress as she poured his coffee. "Karen had a board meeting last night. Told everyone you're freeloading, refusing to pay your fair share." She lowered her voice. "She can be persuasive." Alex stirred sugar into his cup. Memories of his father flashing. Late nights at the kitchen table warning that, once someone like her gets control, She never lets go. He had always thought his dad exaggerated. Now he wasn't so sure. He left the diner and decided to attend the next HOA community forum that evening. If Karen wanted a spectacle, he'd be there to face it. The model home-turned-HOA hall was packed that night, folding chairs lining the walls. A big banner read, "Maintaining the value of Willowbrook Estates." At the front sat Karen in a tailored blazer, flanked by 3 board members. She tapped a gavel. "Order, please. We have an urgent matter regarding Lot 7, the Parker property." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Karen's voice carried the smooth rhythm of someone used to applause. "For years, we have shouldered the cost of maintaining roads, lighting, and security that benefit all residents. Yet one property has refused to participate. Despite multiple notices, Mr. Parker continues to occupy the home without paying dues, depriving this community of fairness." Alex stood. "My father built that house before this development existed. We never agreed to join your association. You can't just rewrite history." Karen's smile tightened. The annexation was lawfully approved. "Everyone else understands the importance of shared responsibility." She flicked a paper in her hand. "Therefore, the board has scheduled a foreclosure auction for next Friday at noon. Proceeds will reimburse the HOA, unless, of course, Mr. Parker decides to make good on his arrears." Gasps, whispers. Alex's chest burned. "You're stealing my family's home." Karen tilted her head, faux sympathy in her eyes. "This is about community standards, Mr. Parker. If you cared about the neighborhood, you'd comply," a man in the back muttered. "Rules are rules," but an elderly woman near the front whispered, "It's not right." Alex caught her eye. She quickly looked down. Karen banged the gavel again. Meeting adjourned. The crowd dispersed, leaving Alex alone at the edge of the room. He noticed how easily Karen had framed him as an outsider. Even neighbors who'd once eaten at his father's table now avoided him. That isolation hurt more than her threats. On the way out, a gentle hand touched his sleeve. It was the elderly woman. "My name's Clara Jensen," she said softly. "They did something similar to me when my husband died. Raised my fees till I almost lost the house." She pressed a slip of paper into his palm. "Call me. There are others." Back home, Alex unfolded the slip. 4 names and phone numbers. A lifeline. He felt a flicker of hope. He climbed up to the attic again and opened the manila folder his father had labeled water rights and easements. Inside were photocopies of county records, maps of underground lines, and a deed to a spring-fed pond that supplied much of Willowbrook's irrigation system. His father had drawn arrows and notes, reserved in perpetuity. Alex's heart thudded. This wasn't just about a house. His father had left him leverage. He stared out the attic window at the uniform roofs of Willowbrook Estates glittering under the streetlights. Karen thought she had all the power. Maybe she didn't know what she was up against. He smiled for the first time since coming home. By Monday morning, Alex had phoned every name Clara had given him. One by one, voices on the other end of the line told the same story. Fines for trivial violations, fees doubled without warning, threats of foreclosure if they dared to question Karen. An elderly veteran named Bill said the HOA even tried to evict him after his wheelchair ramp didn't match the neighborhood aesthetic. "It's not just you," Bill rasped. "She's been running this place like her personal kingdom for years. People are scared." Alex's jaw tightened. Then maybe it's time somebody wasn't. That afternoon, a thick envelope slid under his front door. Inside was a glossy trifold brochure stamped official notice. In full color, like a real estate ad, it announced, "Community property auction this Friday at noon," with a photo of his own cedar-framed porch on the front. A line at the bottom read, "Open to approved bidders only." Refreshments served. They were treating his father's home like a prize at a charity event. His phone buzzed with a text from Clara. She posted about the auction on the HOA Facebook page. People are commenting. Some supportive, some angry. Alex logged on. The post showed Karen smiling beside the HOA banner, announcing the auction as a necessary step to preserve neighborhood integrity. Comments scrolled, "Rules are rules. This feels wrong. How can they do this?" Karen had replied to several with her trademark calm, "We are merely enforcing our bylaws." Alex typed out a reply, then stopped. Every instinct told him Karen wanted a public fight on her turf. He needed a different angle. That evening, Clara and 2 of the others, Bill and a single mom named Dana, came to the Cedar house. They sat around the worn kitchen table where Alex's father once held neighborhood barbecues. The air smelled of coffee and determination. "She thinks nobody can stop her because she controls the board," Dana said. "But the bylaws still have to comply with state law." "I've been through the county records," Alex said, tapping the manila folder. "My dad retained water rights to the spring that feeds the subdivision's irrigation system. Without it, those lush lawns dry up in a week." Bill gave a low whistle. "That's leverage." "I don't want to punish my neighbors," Alex said quietly. "I want to stop Karen from taking the house. My father fought for this place his whole life." "I'm not handing it over." Clara squeezed his hand. "Then we'll stand with you." They agreed on a plan. Alex would hire a local attorney to file an injunction halting the auction on grounds of wrongful annexation. Meanwhile, Clara would discreetly gather testimonials from other residents mistreated by the HOA. Bill would reach out to a reporter he knew from the county paper. "If we shine a light on her," Clara said, "she can't keep acting like a queen." The next day, Alex walked into the courthouse, papers in hand. The clerk helped him file the injunction. "This'll at least slow them down," she said. "You'll get a hearing Thursday morning. If the judge grants a temporary restraining order, the auction can't proceed." As Alex left, he saw Karen's SUV pull into the HOA office lot. Through the tinted glass, he glimpsed her silhouette on the phone, posture stiff. He wondered if she already knew. Back home, he found another envelope taped to his door, this one handwritten. "Cease and desist your slanderous statements or face additional fines," it read. No signature, but the handwriting was unmistakably Karen's. He crumpled the note. Fear flickered in his stomach, but he steadied it. She was rattled. That meant his pushback was working. That night, he walked the property line under a silver moon, the pond at the back glinting like a sheet of glass. Frogs croaked from the reeds. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "Land and water are power. Alex, take care of them and they'll take care of you." He looked back at the house. Warm light glowing from the kitchen window where Clara and Dana were sorting affidavits. It no longer felt like he was fighting alone. Karen had scheduled her spectacle, but Alex was building one of his own. Thursday morning dawned gray and heavy. Alex was already at the courthouse by 8, clutching the folder of affidavits Clara had helped him collect. 12 neighbors had signed statements describing the HOA's intimidation tactics. Unexplained fines, arbitrary violations, threats of foreclosure. Reading them in the waiting room, he felt a strange mix of sorrow and determination. They'd all been too scared to speak before. Now their words were in black and white. Inside the small courtroom, the judge peered over reading glasses. Karen sat at the opposite table with the HOA's attorney, immaculate as ever, her smile cool. When the clerk called the case, Alex's lawyer, a graying man named Russell Green, stood and laid out their claim: wrongful annexation, retroactive fees, and harassment. Russell's voice was calm but firm. "Your Honor, my client's home predates the HOA. No consent was ever given. We request a temporary restraining order halting any sale or auction until this matter is resolved." Karen's attorney rose. "The annexation was approved by a supermajority. Your Honor, all properties within the boundaries are subject to the bylaws. Mr. Parker is simply refusing to pay his fair share." The judge frowned at the stack of documents. "I'll need time to review these records. In the meantime," she tapped her pen, "given the risk of irreparable harm, the auction scheduled for tomorrow is stayed pending further order of this court." Alex exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Beside him, Russell gave a small nod. Across the aisle, Karen's smile didn't crack, but her knuckles whitened on the table. Outside the courthouse, a handful of neighbors waited: Clara, Bill, Dana, and 2 others Alex hadn't met. When he told them the judge had paused the auction, their faces lit up. "First win," Bill said, slapping Alex's shoulder. That night, they met again at Alex's kitchen table. The house hummed with a new kind of energy, like a nerve center. Papers covered the counters, maps of the water rights, copies of Karen's threatening notes, screenshots of HOA social media posts. Dana's teenage son sat in the corner scanning comments online. "The county paper's going to run a story tomorrow," he announced. "They're calling it homeowner versus HOA power," Clara smiled faintly. "About time someone told the truth." Alex looked around at the small group, people who just days ago had been strangers bound only by fear. Now they were allies. "We're not just fighting for my house," he said. We're fighting for all of you. He unrolled a map of the subdivision. A blue line snaked across it from the pond on his property into the irrigation system, feeding every manicured lawn and flower bed. My dad secured perpetual water rights. Without our consent, they can't legally divert it. If Karen keeps pushing, we can shut off the supply until a fair agreement is reached. Bill let out a low whistle. That'll get everyone's attention. I don't want to hurt our neighbors, Alex said. But they need to see what's really happening. Karen's been using the HOA to bully people for profit. If the water stops, they'll ask questions. Dana nodded. Sometimes you have to make a little noise to be heard. The next morning, the article hit the county paper. A photo of Alex standing on his porch ran beside the headline, "Local man claims HOA wrongfully seized family home." The story quoted Clara and Bill anonymously and noted the injunction halting the auction. Within hours, Alex's phone buzzed with messages from people he didn't know, residents from other HOAs with similar stories, old classmates offering support, even a city council member asking for details. On the HOA's Facebook page, the tone shifted. Where once Karen's posts drew automatic praise, now skeptical comments piled up. Why are we paying thousands in fees if this is how the board operates? Did the annexation even follow state law? Karen responded with brisk denials, but the thread grew longer and more heated. By evening, a local TV van parked at the end of Alex's driveway. A young reporter knocked on his door. "Mr. Parker? We're covering the injunction story. Mind if we get a quick interview?" Alex hesitated, then stepped outside. Under the camera lights, he spoke about his father building the house, the mounting harassment, and the fight not just for himself but for his neighbors. His voice wavered only once when he mentioned his mother's passing. "This place is my family's history," he finished. "I'm not giving it up." When the crew left, Clara squeezed his arm. "You just put a face to every person she's bullied. That matters." Alex looked out at the pond reflecting the sunset. For the first time since returning, he felt the tide turning. Karen still held the HOA's reins, but she was no longer invisible. The community was watching now, and tomorrow, when Karen tried to rally her supporters, she'd be facing more than one man alone. By Monday morning, the Cedar House was buzzing like a war room. Dana's son was monitoring social media, Bill was on the phone with veterans groups, and Clara was collecting signatures for a petition to audit the HOA. Overnight, the county paper's story had been picked up by a regional news station. The once quiet street outside Alex's home now saw a steady trickle of curious residents slowing their cars to read the handmade sign Clara had planted in the yard. "Stop the HOA power grab." Karen, however, did not retreat. She called a special emergency session of the board for Tuesday night, closed to the public. Rumors swirled that she was moving to expel dissenting members and approve legal countermeasures against Alex. The word countermeasures had an ominous ring. Russell Green, Alex's lawyer, told him bluntly, "She'll try to crush you in court. Expect her to seek an immediate lifting of the injunction." Sure enough, Wednesday morning the courthouse clerk phoned. The HOA had filed a motion demanding the judge dissolve the restraining order so the auction could proceed Friday as originally scheduled. "Be ready," Russell said. "She's coming hard. This hearing's going to decide everything." Thursday's hearing drew a larger crowd. Reporters lined the hallway. Some of Alex's neighbors came too, clutching signs, "Due process for all" and "Stop HOA abuse." A few muttered prayers as Alex passed. For the first time, he didn't feel like an outsider in his own community. Inside the courtroom, Karen sat at the plaintiff's table, her blazer an even sharper cut than usual. Her lawyer rose. "Your Honor, the restraining order is causing irreparable harm to our client. The HOA must proceed with the auction to protect the community's finances." Russell stood. "We've produced documents showing the HOA illegally annexed the Parker property without consent. Your Honor, moreover, Mr. Parker holds controlling water rights essential to the subdivision's irrigation system." This was known to the HOA yet ignored. A ripple ran through the spectators. The judge leaned forward. "Water rights?" Russell handed up the manila folder. "Reserved in perpetuity by the Parker family. Without agreement, the HOA has no lawful access." Karen's attorney shot to his feet. "Irrelevant. This is about unpaid dues." "No, Your Honor," Russell cut in. "This is about a pattern of intimidation and overreach culminating in the attempted seizure of a home." The judge paged slowly through the maps and deeds. "These are county-stamped documents?" "Yes, Your Honor." Karen's composure cracked for the first time. "This is outrageous," she hissed under her breath, loud enough for the front row to hear. Russell pressed on. "We request not only that the restraining order remain in place, but that the HOA be barred from any further collection actions until these claims are adjudicated." The judge looked from one table to the other, then at the rows of residents watching. "The court will take these matters under advisement. In the interim, the restraining order will remain in effect. Additionally," she added, "no new assessments or enforcement actions may be initiated against Mr. Parker pending resolution." A cheer went up before the bailiff barked for order. Alex's knees went weak with relief. He turned and saw Clara wiping her eyes, Bill gripping his cane like a banner. Karen stalked out without a word, cameras flashing in her wake. That evening, back at the Cedar House, Alex sat on the porch swing with Clara and Bill. The air smelled of rain and wet earth. For the first time in weeks, he felt something like hope. "She's losing her grip," Clara said quietly. "People are talking. Some board members called me tonight. They're scared of going down with her," Bill chuckled. "Told you bullies crumble when the light hits them?" Alex gazed at the pond, where frogs sang in the reeds. He thought of his father's voice. "Land and water are power, Alex, but real power is people standing together." He realized the fight was no longer just about saving a house. It was about giving the community back its dignity. He looked at Clara and Bill. "Tomorrow we take this public. No more backroom meetings. We hold our own forum at the community center. Anyone who's been bullied gets to speak." Clara smiled through tears. "That's what your dad would have done." Alex nodded, the porch swing creaking beneath them. For the first time since the orange notice on his door, he felt the future tilt in his favor. The community center smelled faintly of waxed floors and old coffee. Alex had expected maybe a dozen people to show up for his impromptu town forum. Instead, when he and Clara arrived Friday evening, the parking lot was already overflowing. Parents with strollers, retirees with folding chairs, teenagers with phones ready to live stream. People he hadn't spoken to in years were crowding through the double doors. Inside, the low murmur of conversation built like a tide. A hand-painted sign near the podium read, "Neighbors, not victims." Bill sat in the front row, his wheelchair angled toward the microphone, while Dana organized a sign-in sheet at the door. Alex took a steadying breath and stepped up to the mic. "Thank you for coming," he began, his voice echoing against the high ceiling. "Most of you know me. I grew up at the Cedar House at the edge of Willowbrook Lane. I thought I was alone when the HOA came after my family's home. But I've learned I'm not," he gestured to the crowd. "If you've been fined for nonsense, pressured to sell, threatened with foreclosure, you're not alone either. Tonight we tell our stories. Tomorrow we decide what kind of neighborhood we want." For a moment, no one moved. Then Clara wheeled a shy-looking man to the mic. "Go on, Mr. Jenkins," she murmured. His voice trembled as he described how the HOA fined him $500 for leaving a child's tricycle on the porch, then tacked on late fees until he nearly lost his house. The room murmured in sympathy. After him came Dana, recounting how she was cited for having her mailbox the wrong shade of beige. Then Bill, voice firm, detailing how Karen tried to force him to remove his wheelchair ramp. As the stories poured out, Alex watched the crowd shift from resignation to outrage. People shook their heads, whispered to their neighbors, clutched each other's hands. Someone started filming on Facebook Live. Hundreds of viewers joined within minutes. When Alex finally spoke again, his voice was stronger. "We've filed for an audit of the HOA's finances. We've asked the state to review the annexation. But change doesn't just happen in court. It happens when people stand up." A cheer went up. The sound filled the hall like thunder. Meanwhile, at the HOA office, Karen sat at her desk scrolling furiously through comments on her phone. Her latest post, a polished statement calling the forum misinformation, had backfired spectacularly. Residents she thought were loyal were tagging one another with phrases like, "We've had enough," and "Time for a new board." Someone had even posted screenshots of HOA expenditures, spa trips, catered lunches, all billed as community outreach. Her phone buzzed. A board member texted, "We're done. Resigning tonight." Karen gripped the desk until her knuckles whitened. For years, she had cultivated control. The bylaws, the fines, the fear. She had never imagined the residents would unite against her. Not after all her careful work. Back at the community center, Alex's phone buzzed too. The county paper had just tweeted, "Dozens of Willowbrook residents speak out against HOA abuses at impromptu forum. State Oversight Committee confirms it will review annexation next week." He showed it to Clara. She grinned, eyes bright. After the meeting, people lingered in small knots, exchanging numbers, hugging, promising to attend the next court date. Several approached Alex to apologize for believing Karen's version of events. "We didn't know," one man said, voice breaking. "She made it sound like you were the problem." Alex shook his head. "What matters is you're here now." Outside, the sun had set, but the air buzzed with a strange electricity. Dana's son was live streaming to thousands. Local TV cameras had arrived. In the glow of headlights, Alex glimpsed his father's old truck parked at the edge of the lot. He'd kept it even after his father's death. The sight steadied him. He climbed onto the tailgate and raised his voice over the crowd. "We're going to keep fighting. Not with anger, but with truth. This is our neighborhood, our homes, our lives." A roar of agreement rose, echoing across the parking lot. For the first time, Willowbrook Lane felt like a community again. Karen had built her power on silence and fear. Tonight, the silence had broken. Later, back at the Cedar House, Alex sat on the porch swing alone, the night cool and quiet. In the distance, he could hear sprinklers hissing, water his father had secured decades ago. He imagined his parents sitting here, watching neighbors gather in the yard, and felt a lump rise in his throat. "We're winning, Dad," he whispered. "We're really winning." The following Thursday, the Cedar House felt strangely quiet. After weeks of tension and activity, Alex sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee gone cold. Through the window, he could see the pond glittering under the morning sun, dragonflies skating across its surface. It was the first time in months he'd been able to sit without a knock at the door or a threat in the mail. Russell called just after 9. "It's done," the lawyer said, voice brisk but warm. "The State Oversight Committee ruled the annexation invalid. Your property was never legally part of the HOA, and the county's opening a criminal investigation into financial mismanagement." Karen and 2 board members resigned this morning. For a moment, Alex couldn't speak. He pressed his palm to his eyes. "So they can't take the house?" "They can't take anything," Russell said. "You're free. And thanks to those affidavits, the state's drafting new guidelines on how HOAs handle older properties. You may have changed the law for a lot of people." Alex hung up and sat very still. The house seemed to exhale with him, the old cedar beams creaking softly as if his father's spirit were shifting through the walls. Then his phone buzzed again, this time with a flood of messages from neighbors. Congratulations, thank yous, invitations to coffee. By late afternoon, cars lined Willowbrook Lane. But this time they weren't there to photograph his fence or deliver threats. They came bearing casserole dishes, folding chairs, coolers of lemonade. Clara arrived with a stack of homemade cookies, Bill with a flag he'd once flown outside his ramp, Dana's son with a speaker for music. Someone lit a barbecue in the yard. It felt like the block parties Alex remembered from childhood. Only now the warmth had returned without Karen's permission slips or fees. People shook his hand, clapped his shoulder, told him their own stories. "You gave us courage," one man said, voice rough. "We thought nothing could change," Alex smiled. "It wasn't just me. We did it together." In the golden light of evening, children chased each other around the pond, their laughter ringing off the water. The sign Clara had planted weeks ago, "Stop the HOA Power Grab," had been replaced with a new one, "Willowbrook Neighbors United." For the first time in years, the phrase felt true. As dusk settled, Alex slipped away to the porch swing. He reached up and twisted the old bulb above the doorway. It flickered, then glowed. The porch light his father had installed when Alex was born, a beacon he'd always promised would welcome you home. It hadn't worked for years. Dana's son had rewired it that afternoon as a surprise. Alex watched its soft glow spill over the steps. He remembered sitting here as a boy while his father whittled wood, listening to crickets and dreaming about the future. He remembered his mother waving from the doorway. And he remembered the night just weeks ago when he'd sat in this same spot feeling powerless. Now the porch was full of life again. Clara sat on the railing talking with neighbors. Bill laughed at a joke from Dana, and music floated from the yard. The house, once under siege, had become a gathering place. Alex's throat tightened. "We did it, Dad," he whispered. "We kept it safe. He felt a hand on his shoulder. Clara stood beside him, eyes reflecting the porch light. "You know," she said softly, "this isn't just about saving a house. It's about showing people they don't have to be afraid." Alex nodded. "That's what my father always wanted this place to be. A home, not just for us, but for anyone who needed one." They stood there a moment, watching neighbors mingle, fireflies blinking in the dark. The night smelled of cedar and grilled corn and something else. Possibility. Much later, after the last guest had drifted home, Alex walked down to the pond. The water lay still and dark, reflecting the stars. He crouched, dipped his fingers into the cool surface, and felt the spring-fed current swirl around his hand. The same water that had once given Karen leverage now flowed back into his control. But he thought of his father's words, "Real power is people standing together," and knew he wouldn't use it as a weapon. Back at the house, the porch light burned steadily. Alex turned once more to look at the yard, the tire swing, the windows glowing warm. For the first time in months, he felt not just relief, but peace. Willowbrook Lane would never be the same. And neither would he.